So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Professor Emma McCoy, who's our Pro-Vice Chancellor for Education and a Professor of Statistics in our Department of Statistics. Prior to joining LSE, Emma was Vice Provost for Education and Student Experience at Imperial College, where she spent quite a number of years. So we've been delighted to be able to bring her over to the social sciences side in the last 3 years. Emma is a specialist on time series and causal inference in her discipline of mathematics and statistics, and she's now been delving into the more qualitative approaches that form part of our community here alongside our quantitative specialists. So what I'm going to do is ask her a series of questions in this first 20 minutes that we have together today. And the first question I wanted to ask you, Emma, bearing in mind that the title of our symposium this year is Shaping the World, Impactful Education for Changing Times, what would you say characterizes an LSE education, and how is it preparing our students for a range of shifting futures?
Thanks, Claire, and I think it's wonderful to be here kind of celebrating education and giving us all the opportunity to kind of demonstrate how important education is at LSE. And I think for shaping the world, actually, I think that if I think about the value of what I've done during my career, I think the most impactful things are the kind of students that I've taught and what they've then gone on to do, well beyond any impact of my research, I would say, but I'm obviously very proud of that too. So LSE is a specialist social science institution, and I think that puts us in a very unique place, and I think it gives us an approach to education that is needed now more than ever because of the changing world that we live in. I think understanding society from a social science perspective is really critical. The big problems that we're facing, and I think we've heard Larry Kramer, our president, talk about this. The biggest challenges we face in the world are ones of how humanity deals with some of the technology advancements that we're seeing. And I do think that our education has always at LSE been addressing those issues. I think what is unique about LSE is that our students are trained to think very deeply in their disciplines and to innovate in their subjects. I think what's really struck me, and many of you might have heard me say this before, my son was at LSE, and seeing how he changed how he thought during his degree here, and how he formulated his solutions to those problems, I think really attracted me to applying to come to LSE when this role was advertised, because what we're doing here is really exciting. So I think it's about thinking very deeply about problems. It's that structured design thinking in the social sciences that we promote. I think what we need to do is, how do we formulate, we already know some of the big problems. So I think the real thing is about how you develop those research questions, how you ask the right questions, and then how you think about the causal pathways to solutions. And this is what we do as part of our education, very generally at LSE. And I think that another very important thing about LSE is our incredibly diverse community. So, we are basically convening amazing scholars. We attract brilliant staff, we attract brilliant students, and I can think of no other more amazing thing than bringing these amazing scholars together to solve the world's problems. And I think that's what drives our education here. So I would say that pretty much sums it up. I would also say that Jim, as the Faith Centre, the leader of the Faith Centre, Jim, was talking yesterday about one of the challenges we see. We've been talking about campus relations, for example. One of the challenges that we see is that many of our students come and they've lived in a particular, let's say not a monoculture, but they've lived in an environment where their worldview is the dominant one. And then we bring them into a situation where they're suddenly in this mix of all sorts of different people, and learning to cope and understand and work with each other, even when we have very different beliefs, very different values, we come from all over the world. How critical is that at the moment? I would say it is the most critical thing that we do. We're producing students that then can graduate and actually solve these global problems. And I think that our alumni that I meet regularly, who are just amazing, talk about the benefit of that global understanding and that cultural understanding that they have when they come to LSE.
Thank you, Emma. I wonder if we could push you to reflect on how you see that in action beyond the classroom, as well as inside the classroom, because I think we attach a lot of importance to the experience our students have while they're on campus, and that's not just within their curriculum, it's in their core extracurricular, co-curricular activity.
Yeah, and I do see it. I see it when I meet our alumni. I probably saw it first with my own son and how he changed and how he approaches the problems that he solves. And, you know, it's kind of interesting, and I'm kind of hoping that, you know, there's nobody, that I'm not going to offend anyone from Imperial here, but one of the things that when I was at Imperial, we produced amazing engineers, amazing technologists. But then when we looked at what happened to them in their careers, they really met a bit of a ceiling in terms of they weren't ever able to lead necessarily, or the minority did. If you look at kind of world leaders and people that have gone on to kind of real leadership roles in shaping the world, LSE produces way more than places that kind of are STEM focused. And I think that comes from being able to lead and change is effectively a social science discipline. So I see it from the number of amazing alumni that I have. I see it when we meet our students who are just unbelievable. So I think that I see that enacted basically in our alumni and the work that they go on to do.
Thank you. Without segging into a long discussion about generative AI, which is a topic we seem to be speaking a lot about these days. Nonetheless, the emergence of generative AI is really raising questions about the skills, the competencies, the attributes that we want our students to develop as they go through their education and progress into the world of work. And I wonder what reflections you have about that, about sort of what is the sort of skill set that we need to be embedding in our curriculum, enabling our students to develop in their choices of how they spend their time outside the classroom, so that they are equipped to be effective citizens and effective members of the workforce.
And I'm certainly at that end probably where I do see it. There's a massive change. I do think it's the job market is going to necessarily change. I think that we are well placed because many of the skills that we do develop are the ones that actually we need more than ever. However, I think that we do need to shift a little bit how we think about our curriculum, how we think about the digital skills that we're developing in our students, because we have to produce students that are able to engage with these technologies. They're going to become required skills in the workplace, regardless of the roles that students go on to do. That poses, I think, maybe more of a challenge for us than it does for more general universities. We don't have a Department of Computing, for example. We don't have, which is one of the reasons that we understood that we had to partner. Our Anthropic partnership, whilst it has caused it's raised many questions for staff. I think it's critical that we partner with a technology company that is able to work with us to help develop these really essential skills. I think that we are well placed, but I think that it's massive change is actually required. I think that knowledge has been democratized. I think that we can now ask any of these chatbots a question and it can generate our 20,000 word dissertation or whatever in seconds. That poses some challenges for what we teach, for how we teach it. But I think that we are particularly well placed, I think, to address those challenges. I think we have to keep kind of part of what we do is understanding I guess the big challenges we're facing and how we kind of frame those. And I think that working with AI to solve those challenges, I think should accelerate actually, rather than diminish what we can do. So I'm excited about it, but I also understand we have a real obligation to help our students use it effectively. Many of you will have seen some of Anthropic's latest work, which shows some of the dangers of AI in the fact that you can create AI that tries to manipulate situations, for example. So we have to train our students to kind of understand that. And we have to retain ownership of anything that is generated by AI. We have to take responsibility. We can hand over the work, but we certainly can't hand over the responsibility for the outputs.
Okay, so my final question, and then I'll look at Alex and see if we have time to have a question from the floor, is to say we seem to be living through this period of rapid change. Some may argue that it's always a period of rapid change, that we had the pandemic, our colleagues upskilled themselves really impressively to be able to keep the show on the road for our students, enable them to progress through their degrees and graduate. And now we've got the challenge, as well as the opportunities presented by generative AI. How can we support our educators to develop their practice and have a positive influence on student learning? And how can we incentivize our colleagues in a research-intensive culture to take this aspect of their role even more seriously? We have so many fantastic educators at LSE, but I know many of them feel time-starved to really have these reflections and delve into these topics.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a really important question. I think, as many of you will know, we are funding some AI fellows. It's kind of quite small in number, so the scale is small, but I hope their impact will be much wider, particularly as some of the applications that we've seen, and we're going to be announcing them, hopefully, very soon. Certainly, well, maybe early next week. Thomas is the one that can answer that. So I think that many of them are working across departments or across courses that really impact the whole school. So I think that we need to provide support, and we are looking at ways to expand the Digital Skills Lab so that we can provide support for staff, both administrative and academic, to help rebuild their courses, redesign their courses, rethink their assessment, rethink what skills are going to be important for the next generation of the workforce. I think your point about time-starved is really important. One of the things that AI does give us is the ability to speed up and accelerate some of that kind of course development work that we might have spent a long time over. It can really speed up question design, all of those kind of things. So I think we need to be using AI to develop some of that teaching material as well. And this is going to be controversial, and I think that we need a discussion with students. But AI can also do an amazing job at marking work if we provide it with very clear criteria. However, I think we need to be clear that the students' work is really important to us as well. And I've spoken to students that it's not so much actually about us using AI to mark. For them, it's about wanting their work to matter and be read and to be appreciated. So we need to find ways of making sure that we're constantly engaging with our students so that we can see the quality of what they're doing and really kind of demonstrate that when we're talking about assessment for kind of credentialing their degrees, that's just about that credentialing piece. The assessment that's about the kind of more formative assessment that is for their learning is where we need to be engaging with them. And I think it gives us the opportunity to spend so much more time doing the impactful stuff with our students, spending time getting to know them, really seeing the work they're producing, removing that kind of anonymity that I think many of them currently feel. So I think AI gives us opportunities to kind of do that as well.
Thank you, Emma. Alex, time for one question? Would anybody, we can open up the floor to one question. We've got some mics. Would anyone like to pose a question to Emma? Judith, do you want to introduce yourself? We're going to bring you a mic.
Judith Shapiro. I'll put it as a simple question. I'm going to write up more, which is are you thinking at all about extending the LSE Fellows in Research to take also a critical view of what AI can and cannot do? That is a step back from production. I think it's wonderful what's happened. The Eden grant to Ronnie Raisin and Antonio Mele to produce materials, I'm all for that. But as I understand it, which is very limited, that is the human race, does not know how large language models work, and in particular, why they produce hallucinations, and why, therefore, the co-pilot you've given us all says at the bottom, it may have errors. And my favorite example is, I'm not letting them drive my car, ever since it told me the Hong Kong theater seats 400 people, which is not even the question I asked it, which was, am I correct that the old theater seats 460 and the CKK 420, but I cheated by turning it around, and to please me, it said, you're quite right, but I wasn't right. When we moved, you know, it was moving James Robinson's lecture that was involved. But all I'm saying, that's longer than I intended.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So,
It's a big question.
and it's an
Question. A wonderful tech person, people you could call on. Eden had a training session, part of your initiatives, and there were 6 of us. And the tech person who came to show us how to set questions had a skeptical view.
Yeah.
Hire him. You know, he should have a PhD in it, right? He shouldn't just be training us how to set the questions. He's very thoughtful. He talked about the hype cycle. I thought he was wrong because we got off the hype cycle.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we have some talent who chose to work with us in tech, in IT, because they'd rather be at LSE than in some office.
So I mean, it's an important question, and I think it's part of our role actually is helping our students and our staff understand the limitations of some of the models. So I think, I have heard LLMs be kind of described as stochastic parrots, right? So if you're looking at large language models, they are built on this huge, vast kind of array of knowledge, but then how they generate answers, there's a stochastic element to it, right? So they're looking at the kind of highest probability of a particular outcome. When you do that, you will have some chances of building solutions that are completely spurious because of how it develops those solutions, the stochastic, probabilistic nature of the models. Where I think we're seeing incredible advances now is where AI tools which don't have that stochastic nature are being built in with some of that stochastic so that you can check the pure logic of some of the solutions that are being developed. So I think that we will quickly see advances that mean that these hallucinations effectively disappear or become microscopically small probabilities of being generated. But I think that we need to play a role, and that is exactly the kind of thing we're doing. And in fact, that's exactly the kind of thing that also Anthropic are doing. So I think working with Anthropic on exactly these kind of things is really critical. On the pure research side, I know this is an education conference, but I think the nature of our research will feed into our teaching. I think it's critical that we have academics working on AI in their research, because that will then feed directly into the teaching of our advanced models, of modules and courses. I think that Susanna Morato is working very hard to kind of work on that AI in research. That will benefit our teaching as well, ultimately.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And there's a panel later on this morning where we're going to hear about some of our colleagues who are actually researching the use and perceptions around the use of generative AI in teaching and learning, up through the Genial project and a wonderful project in psychological and behavioral science. So if you're interested in that, I think that panel's in Parish Hall. So with that, I'd like to thank Emma for her time, for her insights, for her championing of LSE education, and I think that's a wonderful start to the day. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.